Hello everyone and welcome to another game recap. Today the fifth round of the Austrian Bundesliga has been played and I had white pieces against international master Frevis, who is a relatively strong player. So let's see what happened. I prepared, considering he has his own repertoire which he trusts and it's only the French against e4. I decided to go for e4 and not for the same with d4 to face his semi-Slavs. So yeah, e4, e6, d4, d5, and as I have said in that long video about with statistics, it's just much better for me to stick to the main lines and to stuff I know and not just play. Why would I play King's Indian attack here, or why would I play anything random when I can just play e4 with main lines and the lines I know in depth and trust. So my opponent is playing the Winawer almost exclusively, so because of that I was expecting bishop b4, knight f6 I didn't even look at, but still, when you just stick what you know. e5, knight d7. I mean, I prefer e5 than compared to bishop g5. Bishop g5, for example, knight d7, or bishop e7, bishop f6, gf. Those lines are relatively hard to play for a win with white. Okay, you can press, but I much prefer the strategical fight f3, e5, and f4. Knight f3. So we're following the mainline theory in the French. And now there are like 20 options here. a6 with b5 can be played. The modern take a6, for example, queen d2, b5. Then there is a3, which I would play. There's also dc5. I'll tell a bit about the opening. There's also takes bishop c5, the old main line, the new main line with queen b6. Queen d2, queen b2. This is very popular these days. There is also this bishop e7, the old move. There is rook b8 as well. There's some sidelines, but anyway, my opponent goes bishop e7, and I went queen d2, a6, bishop e2. Here I spent some time thinking, because this old main line is something I've studied and also played in some training games against my first training partner some 4 or 5 years ago. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I have any games in the database, but I decided I don't, and even if I do, I will still stick with this. The bishop d3 line is a little bit more popular these days with the new engine analysis, but I was just sticking to what I know. Castles b5. And yeah, I played this old main line with knight d1. What's the point of this move? Just want to play c3 to solidify the center, and then after any cd you'll be able to capture with the c pawn, restricting the knight on d7 and also keeping the pawn chain and getting ready to attack on the king side in the future. So what black is supposed to do here is to fight against this. For example, when I played the training games, my training partner would play b4 here, then I would go knight f2, and then she would go a5, and yeah, there were big fights where I would go later on king h1, f5, or g4, f5, and black in the meantime goes bishop a6, gets rid of the French bishop. And yeah, it's a big strategical fight, and there were always ideas with cd and knight c5, and if you go c3 now, then there will be always at least 2 files open, and it will be easier for black compared to the game. Alternatively, instead of b4, you can take, for example, play something like this, go knight b8, which doesn't look right at first, but this knight is far away from d4 where it's supposed to be, and black is just gonna play knight c6, c3, and maybe try to go a5, b4 here, and he managed to destroy my pawn chain. But my opponent was not that familiar with the structure apparently, because he played the move f5, which in some lines does exist, but only after black has achieved many different things, and usually it's not really aimed against knight d1. It's usually aimed when the knight is still on c3 in that structure. And yeah, you will see the difference soon. But now, I mean, here I was out of book. I didn't know how the line goes, but it just went for the normal c3. Now I solved one problem, bishop b7, that's a normal developing move, but again you might consider b4, a5, bishop a6 even here. This is what I would at least look at, but of course I can maybe go for c4. I wasn't sure about this c4 because the line I did calculate was takes, bishop takes, dc, and knight b6. And after knight e3, I wasn't sure what's going on here. Knight e3 is a necessity because otherwise there will be bishop c5 with a pin. And yeah, and there is also this knight e3 immediately. But I'm not sure if I would play c4. Maybe I would just continue with knight f2, a5, and just maybe go for the slow kingside attack. Or I don't know if there are also possibilities of taking here. I'm not sure how good that is, but yeah, this is what I would definitely consider, because now after bishop b7, knight f2, now this bishop is, well, that's the I won't say problem, but the risk when you're playing the French. This bishop could remain quite passive, the structure remains closed. Rook c8, and this move is, I think, way too slow because of several reasons. First of all, I'm not even sure that you'll need it here, and secondly, I can achieve quite a lot, I think, immediately with this move knight g5. The engine doesn't really agree with it. It wants to play knight d3 apparently, but I didn't want to allow c4, b4, and just this counterplay with queen a5, potentially knight b6, knight a4. It's probably still very, very good for me, but yeah, I didn't see the need for this, so that's why I played this knight g5 move. And the point of this move is just, well, basically we have to take, otherwise you will lose the e6 pawn. Okay, technically you can go for something like this with queen e8, then you have bishop b4. This is what I briefly looked at, but now you can do whatever you want. You can go knight d3, and like what is the point of black's strategy with this destroyed bishop? The knight, if it ever goes to b6, I'll just go b3, and so on. So yeah, obviously my opponent took, and now he decided to take on d4, which I don't really like as a practical decision, because now the structure is defined, and I'm not sure, just when I played b3, all of his minor pieces are not doing much, and my minor pieces, this is a very important factor of playing knight g5, that you get the square for the knight later on, because this knight on f2 is my worst placed piece. And similar to that game I played round, what was that, round 2, I played this knight g5 freeing the f4 square, and yeah, queen a5 or something like this was a possibility, because now cd is actually a threat, and I would be forced to go either some rook d1, no, not rook d1, because after rook d1 there was take, and then f4 later on, to show what I mean is this. So maybe I would have to go some queen d3 or queen d1, some move like that, allow f4, and still the black is surely worse. Just a question how much worse he is. But anyway, cd queen a5 is a similar idea, but now there is, like, the tension has been released, and now I can take and go knight d3, and I have everything I want, and my opponent's, this is the story of the French bishop. As we see, it can be like this quite often. Knight c4, my opponent searching for a counterplay, but I'll just kick this knight away. Knight b8, and this is connected with some practical, let's say, I won't say trick, but with a practical idea. This move knight b8, he wants to, okay, this is his worst piece, so it's logical to reroute it somewhere, but at least only one knight can go to c6, both cannot. b3, knight c6, this was the point, because now after bc4, knight d4, some knight f4, probably dc4, now this bishop is activated, the knight is strong, and while I am a piece up, these pawns can be a bit annoying, and there's always some knight c2 or against bishop e3 or bishop a3, wasn't that thrilled with this, but anyway, I saw this in advance, and the rook f4, which I played, was my original idea. So now I just defend this, and I'll take next move if he allows it. Of course, he will preserve the knight, but now strategically I get the bishop to the right diagonal, rook f7, and yeah, I mean, my knight is perfect here. And now I decided to bring the king closer, because if my king is on e3, then I don't need the rook on f4 to protect the pawn anymore. And when I retreat the rook to f1, my knight will also have the f4 square if needed. So yeah, my opponent played knight d7, trying to control the c5 square. Because, for example, I could have gone knight c5 immediately, but rook e7, and okay, not b4, because then I would be able to take and take on a6. It's rook e7, and then if I take, I don't want to take this bishop. This is a really bad piece, and otherwise my opponent will get in b4 and a5, and he achieved something because my bishop will get kicked away. So I should not move the knight. I can play bishop d6, but I can do it next move, so there is no real rush. Knight d7. I briefly considered knight e7 as well with this, but I can at least go bishop h5 if the worst comes to worst, and either take this or block this, because if I'm able to take this, then my knight on f4 will attack two pawns. For example, some just to prove what I mean, here, and let's say king e3 or something like this, and I don't know, I play bishop c5, I go rook somewhere, doesn't really matter, and I solidify here. Okay, don't have to solidify here, I can also open, but open up the position. But yeah, both of the pawns will be weak in the future. So if the worst comes to worst, I can go bishop h5, but I can also go king e3 probably. Even though I did see this trick with knight c4, bc, and then with knight d5 I did see this, because bishop e7 I'm not in time. So I would probably go bishop h5 if I remember correctly in the game. But even something like this with takes and knight c5 is extremely good for white, just because of this bishop, and I will go b4, king e3, a4 next. Okay, I'm not sure about b4, but even with the knight on c4 I can probably play around it, go a4. Anyway, many tempting options, but my opponent played knight d7 and then knight e7, and now I retreated rook f1. That was the whole point of king f2, king e3, knight to go knight f4, because this is now covered, but this knight is bad. So a5, bishop d6, now b4, of course I don't want to allow. b4, maybe he could have tried for something like f4. I'm analyzing the game for the first time, so I don't know what the engine says, but I'm a bit curious, where maybe I shouldn't be that curious and try to figure it out on my own. Anyway, because if I go king d2, then there is some knight f6. Of course, strategically, because of the bad pieces, it's always winning, but for example, takes, knight f5, king d3, b4, now there is some bishop a6, there is some rook c3, but yeah, this bishop g4, if I remember correctly, I did see all of this, and in the end there is knight e6, I think. Not knight e6. Maybe I don't remember it correctly, or I miscalculated. Maybe I should calculate rook c1, not sure. Because rook c1, then this will hang. But anyway, there are really a lot of tempting options after f4. So yeah, my opponent goes b4, but now f4 is never really a problem, and this is never getting active. Rook c3, king f2. I can go to d2 as well, but it was just like, why? Knight c6, then this hangs, and something like this with knight e5, which is of course totally winning for me, but I didn't see the point. Now after knight c6 I would just go rook d1 honestly, and take this next move, or go rook c1, because black is just completely paralyzed. There's not much he can do. For example, rook c1, I just get rid of his active pieces and he's stuck with this. And a little trick which I did see in the game was that here bishop a3, there is knight e5, not so clear, but there is knight d3, I think. Should win relatively easily. So yeah, after knight c8, knight e6, my opponent tried to get rid of the bishop, but it doesn't solve his pieces problem. And here, okay, there are many wins. There is knight c5, should be winning, but rook c1 is the cleanest, because after knight c8, rook c3, bc, I do have a trick with knight d8, which was a threat, by the way, here at this point, so he had to defend it somehow. But knight d8, rook d7 takes, bishop a6 wins on the spot after rook b8 to go here, and there is the trick with bishop c8, and then rook e1, or even rook c1, rook c3, everything is winning. So yeah, here my opponent resigned. Yeah, decent game, I guess. I was more familiar with the opening. I should stick to the main lines, just stuff I know. So yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Thanks again for watching this newest recap, and see you probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Thanks again. Bye.